We're all set.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Welcome. This is a budget workshop for the Bangor City Council. Today is Wednesday, May 1st. It is 5:15 p.m. Around the table, we have Councilor Leonard, Councilor Schaefer, myself, Councilor Chuck Pelletier, Councilor Dean, Councilor Fish, Councilor Haas, Councilor Yakbaga, and Councilor Fournier. We're also joined at the table by Finance Director Little. Tonight, we're going to start with the proposed police budget for the next fiscal year.
All right, thank you. We'll go through the same process we did in the previous budget workshops. We'll go through a summary and then take any questions that you may have, and we'll go from there. So for the police budget, on the revenue side, there is a increase in revenues, approximately 175,000. That is a combination of some MDEA funding and services provided at the airport. There's a grant that typically pays for the K-9 officers at the airport that is going away. But we're going to keep the K-9 officers and the K-9, so the airport is shifting some of those costs directly. So it's not really necessarily an increase in the revenue. It's a change of where the funding is coming from. Instead of grant money, it's now being paid for by the airport. That's essentially the increase in the revenues. On the expenditure side, there is an increase on the expense side. The primary increase is related to payroll costs. And there are some slight increases in some contractual services. There's no new programs being requested. They requested a total of $615,000 worth of capital items, which are mostly vehicle and equipment replacements. The full amount is being recommended for funding either through the annual budget or through reserves or other sources. Their priorities moving forward in the next fiscal year will be continuing on staffing, both hiring, wellness and development of staffing, the community engagement, traffic enforcement, community events, maintaining partnerships and collaborations for mental and substance abuse responses, using technologies for alternate response options like online reporting, and upgrading the radio infrastructure.
Okay, questions, comments? Councilor Leonard.
I just have one question. This is just more so in general for any entity that has a reserve fund balance. Are we going to go over those at some point during the budget process? Do we want to go over that now, or do we want to wait until after the audit comes through?
I was gonna say, based on the comments last week, surprise, finance director, Debbie Laurie, city manager. I was gonna suggest that Dave go ahead and put forward the draft sections of the financial statements for you to see them next week, so that you can actually have it in the committee meeting to
At
talk
finance
about
committee?
that. Yeah,
Yes, that was
Okay.
in my
Yeah.
potential agenda item for next week.
Okay. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Councilor Fournier.
Obviously, wages are going up $1 million.
Yes, their contract is up for renewal
Is it so this year?
this year, yes.
Okay,
So it's currently under negotiation. There is a contingency built in, but in
Right.
addition, wages are going up.
Yeah.
In general.
The other question I had was on seizure funds. Is that what was previously awarded? Or is this anticipated?
There's money available in the seizure funds
Right.
from money that has already been received, and this is to use those funds for these items.
Okay, you anticipate any forthcoming? You don't know.
Right, I
it's
think.
hard
those-
to know.
Right, it depends on.
Other law
Other,
enforcement
yes.
agencies.
So the other question I had is not budget related, but it was under significant challenges. Under employee wellness, you had extra duty mandates, required time off. It just didn't, why is that a challenge? I just didn't understand.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna get out of the, I won't make you sit in that chair.
The challenge is to, it's not so much the challenge of making it happen, it's a challenge of being certain that we do it. So officer wellness is a critical component to making certain that we are putting a whole officer out to respond to calls. There is a variety of challenges now that our officers are facing, and we need to improve how we provide wellness and emotional and physical improvements to our officers, and that's what that's reflecting. There is a need, the old walk it off is no longer applies. We need to be more in tune with what our officers need and make sure that they're ready for duty when they're called upon.
So is that in the budget?
It's going to be. It is and it isn't. I can make it work within what the money that we have been provided. We are working with our grant writer, the city's grant writer, to find some options, and he has been forthcoming with some options for us. Funding options, what I'm referring to.
Yep, great, thanks, sir.
I have a couple of questions. My first question is about BCAT and how that program is going. The reason I ask is I see that calls for service looks like you're averaging about 3,000 calls a month. 30% of those calls involve people who are unsheltered or struggle with mental health and substance use challenges. So about 1,000 calls a month, give or take. But BCAT is only responding to 78 calls a month. So my question is the program working? And should we continue to fund it?
Absolutely. So this past month, I responded to 126 calls. That's with 3 responders. We're not fully staffed because we're having a double the time finding a fourth responder. The program is indeed shaving off calls, vagrancy and loitering calls, allowing officers to focus on traditional law enforcement. The program, it is working as intended. You're all aware that we had a year of struggle. So we're really in the first year of really rebuilding. I don't know how to say it without sounding snarky, but the first year was just didn't work out as well as we were hoping. So this year we've got a 3-person team that is focused. We've given them good direction. When we have a 4th person, I feel as if our calls will probably be around 150 a month. I believe we'll get there. We are working 6 days a week now. So we're getting to where we want to be. It's just taking us a little bit longer than we anticipated. But if the goal was, and it is, to reduce police officer responses to vagrancy, loitering, and welfare checks, and provide a more appropriate response in those instances, we are indeed accomplishing that.
Other question is, it does not appear that your FTEs are changing this year. You are not currently fully staffed.
We're not.
How many people are you missing?
We're down. We've had a good stretch. We just hired a young lady start Monday. We hired a young lady last Friday who will start with us next month. We hired a certified officer from North Carolina who will start on May 6th. We have an officer from Ohio that's we're waiting for complete certification. He should start with us shortly. We're down 6 right now, but we're optimistic. I think without, being too optimistic, I think we're doing better than anticipated. We're certainly better than we were just a handful of months ago. I don't want to get ahead of myself and say, oh my goodness, this is great. We're still going to be full staff, but I think we're doing fine. And I think if we continue to focus on, I was at EMCC this week. We have a real focus on the CJ programs in our region, the UTC programs. I met with the director of the CJ program, EMCC, this week. We're going to try to get into the high school, assuming that the superintendent's office will allow us to, so we can start cultivating future employees at that age and see how that goes. We have got to do something creative to continue finding interested and qualified applicants, and I think we'll get there. I don't want to be too optimistic, but I'm comfortable with where we are.
Thank you. Director Little, for the money that we had budgeted for the current fiscal year for wages and salaries that went unpaid, what happens to that money?
Any savings that we had, if we have, health insurance savings, we use that per, our policy to fund a benefit reserve to help mitigate health insurance increases in the future. Other payroll savings or, expenditure savings is essentially rolled into the fund balance, which is then part of that transfer that we approved at the last meeting to take that money out and then fund reserves.
Got it. So the health insurance increase that we see for 2025 cannot be funded by the
This is,
remaining funds for 24?
this is anticipating a typical increase in health insurance, roughly around 10%.
Mhm.
If that increase comes in at, say, 15, we will look at possibly using the reserve to mitigate that impact to the employees and so that their increase, it depends on, because some years we may get they'll come in with a 20% increase, which we know employees can't afford.
It's not
So,
the employee side, Dave. It's the mitigation from the benefit reserve is on the employer contribution.
oh, okay. I thought it lowered the whole amount. which
It
would,
does not.
In theory, impact both.
No.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Okay.
Because we do pay a percentage, well, the percentages don't change,
That's
so,
correct.
yes, okay. So, but the city side is what's gonna impact the mill rate, so we use the reserve to mitigate the impact of the taxpayer when we have a significant increase in health insurance. And that's based on claims, which we don't know until we get our renewal in January, and it's mid-year.
Got it.
So we may need to use that, so we don't typically use those savings to pay for next year's budget, we look at health insurance, anticipate a typical average increase, and then use the reserve as a potential buffer for a significant increase if we have large claims.
Okay. So I know Counselor Schaefer had a question, but let me just ask my last one, which is overall personnel expenditures up 1.7 million for 101 employees, so about $16,000 per employee is what that shakes out to. That seems like an enormous increase to me. That's not really a question, it's just a statement.
Yes,
So, but a significant portion of that is related to health insurance, which doesn't equate to payment to employees. The other complicating factor, when you look at some of the payroll increases, specifically in public safety, you may recall that we did some mid-contract up changes
Mhm.
to remain more competitive, and we did those in both public safety areas. So now what you're seeing is not just the increase from the approved budget last year, but also the pickup in the mid-year changes we had to do,
Thank you.
which is why it's skewed and looks
right,
That's
the
helpful.
24
Really out of
number,
line.
right, the 24 number is what was approved in the budget,
right.
not what may have changed mid-year with
Right.
any increases that were done.
That makes sense, thank you. Counselor Schaefer?
Just a couple things. One thing I noticed, and because I've been at the table a few times, I felt like this is actually like if we're only 7 up, I don't know that I've been at the table and had it be single digits on staffing as the shortage. I feel like we're pretty close, right?
Yes,
Closer.
I'm pleased with where we're headed.
Yeah, I feel like in the past it's been like 12 or 15, like it's.
We've
past
struggled
years.
with 10, 11, 12 down. I feel like we're heading in the right direction, yes, sure.
I also have at least 30 new graduates.
We're eager to talk with them.
Yeah, I can make arrangements.
Okay.
I'll create some kind of disturbance, like commencement, and be like recruiting, it's a drill. No, I won't do that. The other one too is, and this is sort of general, but you know, we always bury like the health insurance increase in each department. And I think just in a future meeting, it'd be nice to know like, hey, citywide, this is how much health insurance costs, just because it's an expense for every person, every business, every organization. And I just think it might be a nice thing instead of having it be like, well, PD has more in health insurance, well, they have more people or whatever, but like the city is paying, city's insurance costs have gone up X amount of dollars. I think that would be a valuable number to have. And, and the downtown beat officer, I mean, I've heard absolutely nothing but positive feedback on that.
Yes.
And I'm really glad to see that coming back on, and I know that even not at full staffing, I think that should be a priority position whenever it's possible, so I think it's great to see that coming back online.
Keith Lardy will start in that position the day after Memorial Day, and he has the perfect personality for this job. He will be very successful at it. The business owners and those that work and visit downtown will be very pleased with him.
So is filling that position a matter of not just staff, but also a good personality fit, or is it just solely staff members?
Well, we have a number of good personalities. I mean, we have all, we have a wide range of officers that would have succeeded and done very well
Yeah.
at this. In this instance, he expressed interest in this job and we know he's going to be very successful. He does indeed have the right, gift. He can talk. And I think he'll fit in nicely downtown.
But to Counselor Schaefer's point, it is related to staffing.
Okay.
So the fact that you are now seeing vacancies below double digits
Mhm.
is one of the reasons we're able to prioritize and bring back certain programs. So there are a number of initiatives
Yeah,
that the police chief would love to do.
I referenced, we have a young woman that started, so she is a certified officer from Georgia.
Mhm.
We need to get her up to speed. Her training time with us will be less than, say, if she was not a certified
Right,
officer.
right.
So we're aligning what we presume to be her completion of training with the start of the downtown
Right.
officer. So it's a one-for-one.
And then
System.
in general, I think it'd be great to have you and Keith come back to like GovOps and maybe in September or to see how things went and just to report back.
That was already part of the discussion with him.
Okay.
He'll have to present to you at some point on how it's all going.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Yes, Counselor Bean.
Question on the health. The health that we're looking at is health insurance. Correct. You're saying 10%.
Mhm.
You're planning on across the board for all departments?
Yes.
And have you looked into exactly what it's gonna be? Because that seems rather low. I mean, I know that it's based on not only people that you have, but anticipated people, correct?
So the 10% is the increase in the health insurance rate that we project. Historically, we're averaging around 10%. Some years it may be 8, some years it may be 12. But in
But have you,
non-bid
have
years,
you looked into it? Because 10% is very low. It's
So
more
we-
like 17 to 19,
10% is more reflective of the city's
because you're larger.
experience, right? So we're in essence a self-rated group,
Okay,
which has pluses and minuses.
it just seemed low, so I just wanted to.
Yes, so for
Clarify
small, as the group the size we are, we do get a little bit of a break, but
Mhm.
because we're self-rated, we also take a risk. Because we're not part of a bigger pool.
Okay.
We can't, so if you have a year where you have $10 million claims, it's all you.
Mhm.
You don't get to share that risk in a broader pool. So it's a risk we run, but
Mhm.
we've generally made out well.
Yeah, on average, it's around 10%.
Okay.
Some years it's really low because we had a really good year, no claims.
Mhm.
Other years, we have significant claims and we negotiate and try to get that down as close as we can, but on average, we normally do 10% because that's where we fall.
Okay.
Counselor Fish?
I just want to thank Chief Hadway. I know it took a lot of effort and especially when you're shorthanded, to get the downtown beaten. I know a lot of people are very happy with that. Most of the questions I had were answered by Council Chair Pelletier. I think the question that I have is on the budget, when you see the health and wages increase somewhat, is it taken into account filling some of the vacancies, if we're optimistic that some of those vacancies,
Yeah,
and therefore the wages will be increased as well as insurance benefits?
right. What we budget is though we're fully staffed. So we do budget for
Okay.
those vacant positions. And we use an average of health insurance. We may put in some at a family, which is the highest rate, or some without insurance, so they offset. So it's an average of the health plus, but we do budget for all vacant positions. So that in theory, if we come fully staffed, we already have the money to pay for it.
Okay, and I wondered, with the overtime, so if we're short on staff, does the overtime that is taken up to try to cover for, the services we need, does that usually outweigh what a typical wage would be, or how does that compare?
Depending on the year, but typically the vacancies, at least the last few years, the vacancies have been significant enough to cover the full cost of any additional overtime beyond what was typically budgeted. So even though there may be savings because we have vacancy, the savings aren't as great as what you think they are because they get mitigated by the overage and the overtime. So far, that's been able to be covered There's always the possibility, depending on if there's significant issues or that we need to increase overtime. But so far, by budgeting as though we're fully staffed, we have that capability of covering the extra overtime.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes, Councilor Leonard.
I have a few questions, one of which is, this time last year, I think it was, you or another officer, brought back a figure about 50% of a police officer's time spent was with unsheltered, individuals. But please correct me if I'm wrong on that, figure, but, when comparing last year, how does that look to what's happening on the ground right now? Has that percentage gone up or gone down compared to last year?
On any given day, 30%, 33%, a third of our calls are somehow connected to either the unsheltered population or those that are struggling with substance abuse or mental illness.
Right, so those calls are 30% of those calls. So with the police officer's time, because obviously some responses are rather quick, others require a lot more time. Is that still about it? Would that figure still be the same for each individual officer on
Yes,
average?
and that is indeed the value of BCAT. So BCAT can spend time with an individual and try to find a sensible solution. Where a police officer probably has 2 calls pending, so is trying to find a quicker solution so he or she can move on to the next call. BCAT has the ability to stay with that person, transport that person, connect that person back with their case manager in a more efficiently than a police officer has the time to devote to it. But I don't know. I mean, honestly, these calls take a long time, right? If we're going to engage the person that's in crisis and actually try to find a solution, we have to spend the necessary time with that person.
And that actually brings me to some, not really questions I have, they're just more so points to talk about in regards to how we look at this issue for next year. I know that the county has implemented a dispatch program that uses artificial intelligence, and it saves a tremendous amount of time with their calls. I put that out there only because if there are a lot of calls that are being put out to your dispatch network, some of those calls might be more crisis related, not necessarily to say that they're not important, but when there's an actual emergency where someone's life is on the line, those minutes really do matter. They do add up. And so I guess one thing that I would be sort of put out to the council is this, well, one, Chief, do you think this would be advantageous or helpful to the police department, the fire department to utilize a artificial intelligence assisted dispatch work, or do you think this would be maybe a step in the wrong direction?
I think there's value in exploring it. I can't say with certainty that I could give you an educated answer on that. I am aware of the county's process and their new system. And would it work for us the same as it does for them? It may. I think it's worth examining closer for sure.
Okay. I don't know if anyone wanted to add anything to that. I do have two other things one other thing I wanted to discuss, but time is something that I know is always against you guys. And so this is one program where it'd be a very small cost, but it beats having to have an officer speeding down the highway, or it beats trying to spend more time on the phone with someone to get information rather than having maybe an artificial intelligence entity being able to talk to that person while that person has a really true emergency where lives are on the line, are able to get through more. That's how I really look at this. It's a little bit of a cost that we would have to make an investment in early on, but it makes your work so much easier, I would argue. But I think this is something we should really consider at this point in time and try to work it in coordination with the fire department. In terms of another program that I think we really should be considering, this is a bit more complicated because we definitely have to make sure that we're working in accordance with state law as well. I would really like to see both with just the city as a whole, but obviously the fire department, police department would benefit mostly from this is the incorporation of more drone technology to better use for surveillance, better help with firefighters figure out where a heating source is in a burning building. But I think this is another technology that is small capital investment that heavily increases the amount of information officers and firefighters are able to receive, thereby responding to a crisis or an emergency in a much more efficient manner. So I know that it's a bit too late to be bringing this up right now, but I really do think that in terms of challenges, or opportunities, these are things that we really need to incorporate for future budgets coming up.
I can share with you that our grant writer is actively searching for grants right now. We have a desire to have a drone program. We've had a program in place. We just haven't had the funding to support it. We actually sent somebody, we had a drone operator who has since left us, for the fire, for the,
Edwin?
you know, what's the fire service,
Fire marshal's office?
Fire service? Yes. Yes, he's a nice young man. He's gonna be a pilot for the, but we were all ready to go. And then we had to retool it. So currently, the city's grant writer is looking for funding for us. Just today, he sent us some options on certain types of drones that we should examine. We're doing that now. We have been in conversation with the sheriff's office. They have a drone program, and we intend to learn from their program and build our program based on their success.
Anyone else?
We want to use it to mark. So I already wrote up a council, I've already developed a council order for this, and I did include the fire department. Because everybody likes a firefighter. But we've discussed this, the chief and I, about using a drone for hazmat situations and for overview of fire scenes and things of that nature. We used the sheriff's office drone just a week ago to look for a lost person in the woods. And it was at night, 10, 11 o'clock at night. It was just pitch black, and I was very impressed with the technology. So we will move forward with this program for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Yakobaga?
Thank you. So just one of the challenges you mentioned here, it's about establishing partnerships with the departments of public health and community services, parks and recreation, and I bet like there must be some communication going on all the time, but is there a specific plan to improve those partnerships and strengthen those relationships?
So we have a number of partnerships in place now. We just have to make sure that we can continue with these partnerships. We are a service-oriented community, and we are definitely in place to help those that present with varying crises. And a lot of times, the police department is the first contact. And if we're able to pass that person or hand that person softly off to an agency that is better prepared to handle it, whether it be internal with BCAT or our public health, our city public health, or maybe it's one of our partner agencies. And of course, we still have our mental health practitioners through our collaboration with the Katy Hospital riding with us every day. So we will continue. That program is very healthy. We'll continue to move forward with that program.
And maybe I missed the answer, but has there been an increase in the number of calls to BCAT program?
So last month, we were generally in the 75 to 80 a month range, and we spiked to 126 last month. And I fully anticipate that those numbers are going to continue to rise. A lot of those calls are calls for welfare checks. And a number of those calls are also self-assignments where they see a person whom they know or they've engaged earlier, and they want to reconnect with that person to see if they can continue to steer that person toward better options.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Moving on to fire.
Thank you. So for the fire department, there is, on the revenue side, there is a decrease in the anticipated revenues that is related to a FEMA grant. That funding is going away. Other than that, the other revenues and charges for services are essentially even, not much change there. On the expenditure side, you also see an increase there. Their contract is also up for renewal this year. So as with the police department, there is an increase in the personnel payroll costs. There's also a fairly significant increase in the hydrant rental, and that factors in the water district's rate increase that is upcoming, which was 16%, I think it was. So those are the significant changes on the expense side for the fire department. No new programs. They did request $2.9 million in capital funding request, which is again, vehicle and equipment replacement and building improvements. All of that is in the city manager's recommended budget for funding, either through bonds or reserves or other sources. The largest request is the training center. That has been an ongoing request for several years. Typically, it's been a no, but we threw it in as a yes this year because they really could use one.
We haven't been able to identify a
Right.
grant funding source that fits.
Yeah. we looked
That
at
was
grants
really our
or-
first priority is,
Mhm.
can we get it through a Department of Homeland Security grant? Can we get it through a state of Maine grant? Can we get it through a congressionally directed spending request? And it's been a flat out no all the way around, so I think we've worn out our options.
Yeah. So their priorities upcoming, staffing and recruitment, training, evaluate the response resources to see how responses can be enhanced or improved on. The central fire and training facility improvements, and as with the police department, upgrading the radio infrastructure.
Questions and comments?
With the radio, like, can it be pulled together with police?
Yeah, it's gonna
It
be a
is.
combined program of
Okay.
police and fire. So,
All right.
yes.
And one of the fire assistance chief is actually taking the lead on that whole fire infrastructure radio infrastructure upgrade, because it is all public safety. And I'm not sure, I even think Public Works might get roped into that, but he's picking his head up going, Is it all the citywide or is it just the public safety, Tom,
It's public safety.
Public
The
safety.
Infrastructure is there for in the future.
for everybody else?
Other questions? Counselor Fournier,
Just gonna say, under accomplishments, the highest amount of calls for service for the second year in a row. That's great. That you guys can do that. Not so great that. In fact, we had to make a call last week and the people who showed up were just very, very good. So it was very nice.
Thank you.
So,
my one question is about the grant revenue that is expiring. Are we looking for any additional funding for this year from grants? Do we have our grant writer on top of any?
We're always looking for opportunities on grants, actually, next week at finance and then to full council will be under their accomplishments, the $200,000 grant from the EMS. That will be coming forward to accept and appropriate funding to pay for a variety of things in the EMS program. And we will continue to look for grants at every opportunity that we can to either replace equipment or as an alternate funding source.
And it's our understanding that there is gonna be a round 2 of the EMS funding grants. The MEMS grants, right? It's main EMS. And the good thing is they were pretty flexible. So, we're gonna be able to use this to try to diversify our training.
Yep.
And continue to build, training resources to support the employees.
Yeah, about half of that is dedicated for training purposes, and the other half is for new EMS equipment, CPR equipment and that.
Counselor Schaefer?
The other question I had, and it's noted in here, but the EMS division director was a new position we funded last year, right? Was that the one that,
Was it last year or 2 years ago, Tom?
Last year, he was on a year ago, a year in January.
Yeah.
and so, and I see some like accomplishments here, but does that also, is that overlooking PD as well?
No.
Only fire?
Right, so it is the EMS director. I think that's the individual's title. So what's happened is, there are specific protocols and quality assurance processes that you need to go through if you are providing EMS services. So this individual is able to look to each call, provide the necessary feedback, and ensure that we remain in full compliance to provide ambulance service. That role was previously filled by an assistant chief.
Mhm.
And as things and regulations change, it becomes more and more regulatory in nature. We needed somebody more fully. So those responsibilities moved from an assistant chief into this position specifically.
Well, it it looks like it sort of at least paid for itself in the first year, which is nice. So it was nice to have that update on something previously new program.
And this position actually was significantly involved in the training program that we did with Eastern Maine Community College, where our staff, in essence, staffed the EMT program basic to get people up and educate them to the point where they're able to take their practical and their written tests. And out of that, we have 4 new employees. So.
That's great.
Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Counselor Leonard?
I don't know if, Chief, if you're able to answer this question, but, so under priorities, and I'm only asking this just because of the, vocal attention, the men and women have, made public, over the, last, year and a half, but, the strategies to bolster, recruitment and retention, what are those strategies that we're working towards right now as a department?
One of them was a big step that we just took was training, putting people through an EMT class through Eastern Maine Community College that we were teaching, but it was sponsored by them because they didn't have staffing to do it. Other things we've been doing is looking at sign-on bonuses. They've been able to do lateral transfers so they can bring some of their seniority with them so that they can reach their earned time quicker and things like that. So we've been looking at any strategy we can. I mean, we go out and recruit people, go talk to people that we never used to do. I mean, in the fire service, it was many disgruntled people over a period of time because they want to think you're robbing them of people. But it's the opportunity to go and we call it recruitment like anybody else. But we use anything we can that's helpful for something like that.
And so obviously we've had 12,000 calls last year in comparison to Portland. They're like, what, 17,000, 18,000, something like that. And I don't remember how much staff they have in Portland's fire department, but somewhere around, I think just shy of 200.
Around 240.
Okay, I lowballed it, okay.
Yeah.
But
That
so,
might be a little bit off too, but. I
Oh,
think
okay,
we're
but-
Probably in between there.
the point stands though, is that the per capita amount of calls that are being handled by Bangor firefighters is extremely high. I think it's actually the highest in the state. And so how do we mitigate that stress on firefighters, or how do we reduce those calls overall, which I in the latter, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I wish I had an answer on how to reduce calls. One way that we reduce calls over the years, we used to do non-emergency transfers. We elected not to continue with that program. Well, we could if we wanted. We've held it in place if we needed to, but it's by the way we handle it, trying to be good to people, and work hard, and acknowledge their work, and be there for the people. I think that our people really realize, when it comes down to it, they're there for the people of the city and the people that live and work here. And, they often do quick turnarounds at the hospitals, and things like that. So we use outside resources, but we've also limited our resources trying to help our people with, others being short in the area. They may call and want us to go to a town that's 20 miles away. That just doesn't happen unless it has for a truck to go out of town now. One of our ambulances, it has to be approved by the assistant fire chiefs that's working. It isn't just decided because someone made a decision somewhere else. They make that decision, and of course, they're like anything. I say they have some of the toughest decisions any day, because it could be a child, outside community that's having problems. But if we don't have trucks available here, we have to provide for here, or they'll make that they'll, sometimes will gamble if it was something traumatic and they think that it was a young person or something, that they'll have to make those decisions. So there's just a lot that goes on making those decisions.
So I think we're seeing a eventual, I mean, unless there's some unique way, like how we're able to assist the police department with the BCAP program to really cater toward a specific call volume. But please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the fire department is going to be able to do a similar like program to reduce a specific number of calls. And again, please correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, I think that we may need to look at someday, and maybe we should be looking at it now, should have looked at it before. The mental health people, the example that the police department uses is wonderful. And I think BCAT has a direct relationship to the amount of calls we have. I think in some ways around, I think the EMS director told me the other day, it's around 18% of what we do has something to do with some relationship with those that are unsheltered or with mental health issues. So if we could ever get a handle on that, somebody could have the magic wand, then that would make a difference for us.
So the last question, when we're looking at potential fire department, let's say 2 years down the road, are we looking at a staff increase at this point?
Staffing would make a difference, but it's gonna take a model difference, or because of the cost of employees to put an extra truck on the road, it's gonna take 8 to 10 new employees. And that's a lot of money. So money's the driver of everything. If we can do that, then we're flush with money, and maybe something we can look at that way. But I think that we're gonna be working the model we have for a while. I'd love to have 20 more people, believe me. I'm telling you that. I'll tell our staff that. I'd love to have 20 more people, but realistically, I don't know if that's gonna come to fruition.
Thank you.
Councilor Yakubaga? Okay.
So maybe following up a bit on that, but a bit different as well. One of the challenges, again, it's addressing employees' health, whether physically and mentally or mentally. So are there any steps that the department has taken to address those issues to avoid retention and to avoid burnout?
Yes, so we have now, after losing an employee last year, we have mental health workers that are at our disposal. I keep their cards on my desk so that if we needed some of them. The union's done a great job with peer counselors and training people and being ready for them. We're much more in touch with that now, and even the employees will reach out back and forth and work, and we'll see if somebody's down for that day or just don't seem to be themselves, or reach out to them. And so mental health's a big thing today with us in the field. Yeah, it is. I don't know how to, I'm not good explaining something like that because it touches you, knowing what they go out and they see. To have employees that we've lost. I've been a part of losing 2 employees since I've been the chief, and it takes its toll on people. It does, and much more than it used to. People used to internalize that so much more. And we used to do critical stress debriefings, but they'd be a week afterwards. So these people would bottle up these things for a week and not get any of it out. Now, the council say the quicker we can do a quick debriefing, the better chance that that employee will come back to work, and that they'll come back much quicker than if we were to wait a week. So.
And healthier.
Pardon me?
And healthier.
And healthier, yeah. And so I like to think that we're doing a good job with that, a lot better than others.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. I get to go to project graduation plan.
Fun.
Did you want to stay? It's been a shitty meeting. Like they had it on Thursday one time, we had a
That's all
Thursday
on the
meeting.
first one, and that was it.
And I've had a city meeting every time, so I don't know what I need to do. Sign me up for
Spend the
something.
night with me. Oh, I think I'll just.
That sounds
2
weird,
a.m.
project graduation.
2 a.m. They signed up to go at 2.
Okay, I'll be there.
Thank you, everybody.
Boy, that's gonna be at the paper.
Nah, they're not here. Parks and Rec.
So for Parks and Rec, on the revenue side, there is an increase in the anticipated revenues. That is primarily related to actual prior history, looking at what's been collected, mainly related to summer camp and the Kids Cave. Those are two very popular programs, so revenues have been bumped up related to our past history with those programs. On the expenditure side, there is about $160,000 increase. That is related to payroll, a little bit of supplies, contracted services, and utilities, sort of spread out that make up that increase. In their capital plan, they did ask for a little over $1 million. We are not, in the proposed budget, it's not everything is being recommended, everything other than the mobile stage. We are looking for a possible alternative to replace the mobile stage. But other than that, vehicle equipment replacement, facility maintenance, those types of items are in the proposed budget, all to be funded through either the annual budget or reserves or other sources. Their priorities coming up in the next year, the Cascade Park Master Plan, the Kenduskeag Extreme Trail, repair and resurface Stake and Pool, the monument rehabs downtown, including repainting Paul Bunyan, and the public restrooms, which has been a topic for a while. So that they get in those focus.
Questions and comments? Counselor Fournier.
So I was just looking at FTEs from 23 to 24, it came down 4, and it's staying there. I just can't remember why 4 were reduced from the previous.
I think it has something, I'm going to defer to current city manager and current finance director to make sure I speak this correctly. As you all know, we rely heavily on temporary payroll and temporary positions, and FTEs get calculated differently with those. We're not losing people or reducing our full-time permanent employees. It has more to do with how we
Seasonality.
Yeah, calculate temporary employees.
Yeah, that's fine. And the revenue side, concert revenue come in?
Yeah, concert revenue is included in, I believe, I'm gonna say, use of property. We use,
Yes.
we collect that as rents, and that goes directly to our park maintenance division.
So is that a higher budgeted number than?
We anticipate, and I'm trying to remember exactly the number off the top of my head, but we anticipate the same number of events as we did the previous year in this current fiscal year. So that number in of itself did not change from this current fiscal year to upcoming FY25.
Because last year was a big year for.
Last year was a big year, and
Yeah.
as you all have, well, maybe you have seen, it appears we're gonna be on the same number and types of events at Main Savings this coming year. So between the two, and remember, the season is split between fiscal years, so whatever's gonna be left up and through June will get included in FY24, and then we'll tag on in the spring of 25 for the upcoming fiscal year. So we should be about the same number as in this current fiscal year. If that makes sense.
The previous year was a record year.
We anticipate this year to be the same type of years where we experienced in the summer of 23 into the spring of 24. So we anticipate events for summer of 24 into spring of 25 to be the same as we just experienced.
Yeah, the 23, 24 wasn't as good as 24.
Maybe I'm doing a poor job of explaining it, but
Maybe I'm just not getting it.
we anticipated X amount of events to lead into when we developed the the
Yeah,
current budget year we're in.
okay. All right,
Increase slightly. I think the
there was a
revenues
slight
increased slightly. I think what we're trying to say is the number of events are similar. But for example, looking at the upcoming year, we don't have the number of 12 and 15,000 person events that we did last year. I think last year we had
Probably
more.
Not.
So there are slightly more events this year, but we anticipate attendance to be on par. So there is a slight increase, I believe, in the proposed revenue because the amount of the ticket revenue that we receive increases.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
By
yes,
contract.
Right.
Well,
So there is a
That's where I
slight,
was kind of going.
Okay.
With all that as well.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, yes,
so there is a slight increase in revenues related to the concerts based on the change in the per ticket revenue
Right.
that we receive.
Okay,
It wasn't
thank you.
big enough to highlight. The biggest highlights of
Okay.
that increase was the kids cave and the summer
Yeah.
programs.
and the docking fees, I know American Cruise Lines is gonna be there.
Likewise,
more
there was a
often.
slight increase this year, similar to the same kind of adjustment that we do to our concerts. The rent, their base rent is consistent throughout the agreement, and they've,
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
even though this is not like a drop off point, it's more.
but there was an uptick, so there's two pieces of revenue for American Cruise Line. There's the per year rent, and then the per passenger docking fee that's analogous to the ticket fee we do for waterfront concerts.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if it was different because,
Because now we're a home
There's-
port for,
Yeah. Yeah.
for the start off.
The rent essentially was to help us put the dock in every year, and that stayed consistent. And then
Okay.
there is an escalator for the rent, I think in 2 years, actually, as I think about it.
Counselor Schaefer?
I just wondered if you had a update on the park ranger program, since that was a new program that was funded last year, and how that worked out.
That has worked out fantastic, and the gentleman that we have doing it, if you haven't met Rob, has been a good fit for that. He's been able to accomplish a variety of different roles for us. We just interviewed two potential seasonal rangers this past week. At observation, the waterfront specifically, it seems to have made a huge difference down on the waterfront. And much like you heard the chief of police with BCAT, Rob is our park ranger, supports that function. He's been able to address some of those initial issues and refer them to BCAT. So in addition to that, he was out to the boardwalk this morning. The boardwalk opened this morning, so he was out assisting them and putting signs up, and his interaction with the public, and we've heard several positive comments back, so appreciate the support for that. It's been a huge benefit for us in the operation around the city.
And I think the other thing, let's point out that this individual is now our harbor master. That
Yes,
it's no longer Parks and Rec Director Willett, who is serving as harbor master.
Yeah.
Are you still the park ranger?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he also has been trained and certified as the harbor master
Okay.
Yeah.
because that's sort of the base of operations specifically in the summer months. And because the individual is full-time, the restrooms along the waterfront have now been open for 3 weeks, I
2 weeks,
think.
yeah, we opened the week.
Once,
Yeah.
because some of them are seasonal.
Yeah.
So you have to drain them and do all of that, but the weather has improved enough. So both the restrooms in the Harbor Master House, as well as in the utility building down by the, public art are both open. And because that individual has a regular presence, we're able to ensure that they're appropriately maintained.
We've also been able to, as we designed it, is assisting with events.
Great.
So this past weekend, he was on the waterfront for a walk on Sunday, and he'll be able to, we now have an event staff of 2, so. That'll be.
He was one, by the way.
The only question I had is about Pierce Park. I've had a couple people ask me if we plan to improve lighting in Pierce Park for the evening hours. I don't see that here, so I'm curious if it's anywhere.
So we did add some lighting already. There's a lights on one of the decoratives on Harlow Street, and then we put a light on the decorative up on Park Street. What says that, Center Street? The hill up by City Hall.
Center
It's
Street.
it's Center Street.
Is
Yeah,
it?
Park Street's behind it.
Park Street's behind it. And when we determine, we're at a point now trying to determine what we're gonna do with the fountain, or do we do something with some plantings and add lights to the fountain? So that's the last piece of lighting that we haven't started yet for the season. We did have some conversations with the library about potentially mounting some lights there, but given the historic nature of the building and that sort of, we felt it was more productive in the short term to add some flood lighting where we did.
Thank you. And I think that's important to understand is that it's flood lighting. There has been additional lighting that has been attached to these poles.
Mhm.
It is not turning up of an existing light. It was
Yeah.
the addition of of lights.
Counselor Fournier?
I was just gonna give you kudos, on the Cameron Stadium, having the New England
Thank you.
Shark championship here as well as the main. The other question I had is regarding bathrooms. So where is the maintenance fee or the maintenance expense for the bathrooms in here?
I'm gonna defer back here, but I'm gonna say first, given the initial funding source that we're using, the annual operation of that, my guess will be we're gonna discuss that next time we get together to talk about budget for FY 26.
Right, so the council order that was adopted by the city council included the maintenance costs as we began to roll this out. So for the first year, the money that you all appropriated from your ARPA funds will pay for the construction, installation, and maintenance of public restrooms. And we will have a much better sense getting through our first year as to what the most appropriate approach is to ensure that restrooms remain clean and available for use. And while we're talking about it, just so people are thinking about it, I know the question is, when's it coming back? I know that must be your question.
No.
Okay.
But it's
Well,
coming back.
It's, so right now, we're looking at making it in mid-May as a council workshop. Tracy's been pulling together and sorting through all of the feedback, both from the public forum, as well as that's been received by the city via email, and has refined some of the proposals that we'll bring back based on the feedback we've received.
And I probably got this wrong. I thought it was more for the structural. I know there was a small maintenance fee in there. I think it was what, $1,500?
That was
But it just, that's where I'm going. Just, I want to make sure that
Yeah.
comes out.
Yeah.
there is adequate money in the funding set aside by the council to ensure that we
Alright.
can appropriately maintain.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, last topic tonight, public services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Councilor James.
Yes, happy anniversary.
So our last group is public services, which includes public works, our fleet maintenance, engineering, and our overall infrastructure capital plan. And so those are all combined in the figures that you're looking at. On the revenue side, there is an increase. That increase is primarily related to solid waste disposal. It's not necessarily additional money because there's also going to be an offsetting increase on the expense side for solid waste disposal. And that's really essentially the revenue side increase. On the expenditure side, there's about $600,000 increase in total. That's related to some payroll, the increase in the solid waste disposal expenditures, contractual services, and insurance. There's no new programs that are being put forth. Combined under the capital plans, there's just under $10 million that is being requested. It is, most of it is being recommended for funding other than $395,000 under Public Works. Aaron's very, very good about prioritizing his requests. And we try to give him what we can, but we can't give him everything that he would like to have. So there's a number of equipment pieces that we are not recommending for funding out of this year's budget cycle. But the other programs for both all of fleet and the infrastructure projects are being recommended for approval. Priorities going forward for Public Works is to complete the implementation of the asset management software. We bought that a couple of years ago. It's been a very lengthy process to identify assets and assign them life cycles and repair cycles and get all of that information in. So we're hoping that for the Public Works assets, that will be completed in the upcoming year. And then we'll start focusing on getting the water quality assets in the system as well. implement a management plan to extend road life, a student outreach program, and supervisory and leadership training for the fleet maintenance, staff training and development, looking for ways to improve, their service abilities and safety for the employees in the shop. Update their inventory tracking system. They're looking at possibly doing a barcode system to help, reduce the amount of manual input of putting in, code numbers into the inventory system. For engineering, looking for additional grant funding opportunities to fund different projects. Improve our facilities for, and all of our infrastructure for alternate modes of transportation. That's pedestrian, bicycles, that type of stuff to try to make the city a little more user-friendly for alternate modes of transportation. Continue to maintain compliance with state and federal requirements, and improve our ability to inform the public of what projects may be going on or will be working so that we can avoid traffic issues and other things. We do send out alerts, but if there's other ways that we can notify the public of what's coming up for projects, we would like to explore that.
Questions and comments?
I just wanted to add some clarity. So when the public hears $10 million worth of capital, most of which are funded, I think probably everyone may have gone, oh my. I think what's really critical to understand is about 60% of that is related to infrastructure. And when we're talking about infrastructure projects, we're often talking about roadways, bridges, et cetera. And the city participates in a number of initiatives with DOT. So some of them are referred to BACS projects, Bangor Area Comprehensive Transportation System.
Nice, I want to come up.
That is the mechanism by which, thank you. That is the mechanism by which federal highway funds make it through a pipeline in the city and in this state to be allocated. So BACS projects typically have an 80% federal funding and a 20% local funding. So don't think that the city is spending $10 million on infrastructure. A lot of that is contingent upon the receipt of state and federal funds to help buy down those.
Yep.
Because I went, and you said.
Yes,
10 million.
yes, that,
Okay.
it did require clarification. So I appreciate that.
I'm supporting it.
2 comments, 5 questions. 2 comments. First, congratulations, Aaron. 0 lost time injuries. That's, I know when you first came on board, that was a priority and that's just absolutely outstanding. That's great. And thank you for completion of the waterfront down to 395. That's been very nice.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, it's very good.
Hopefully we'll have some grass growing real quick.
Yeah. The dog would like that very much. So I just had my 5 questions. One is other fringes. Why did that come down? Basically back to 23. It bumped up last year, then now it's come down. And you can get back to me.
Yeah.
The other question I had was on sanitation. Again, it looks like more of a roller coaster. In 23, it was at 3.1. And last year it was at 2.9. Now it's back up to 2.2.
Right, in 23, the 3 million that was there was, prior year budgets were sort of drastically overestimated. And in 24, that was brought down to be more in line with actual. And then 25 is again, based on actual numbers and what we anticipate to occur.
I think it also reflects the change in the prior to when we were with PERC. There was a
I
rebilling
wasn't
process.
thinking about
It was the
PERC.
third party haulers, so
Yeah.
third parties could dump under our license and in turn we would rebill. So I think that is what was included in the 2023 budget. We finally said, let's stop the fantasy. Yeah.
And electricity's coming down 100,000. I mean, someone's efficiency made, some of the stuff.
I was gonna say it's the conversion of virtually everything we have to LED.
Oh, is it?
Finished
Okay.
our, yes, Aaron with Public Works.
Yeah.
I just finished up our LED conversion last year and proving to be
Wow.
quite a savings.
That's substantial. That's incredible.
It is. Yeah, it's
Thank
great.
you. Yeah. And the last question I have is credit. What does credit mean?
Oh, the credit is.
I can't.
The credit is the work that Public Works does for other departments.
Oh,
And that's internal billing that they get money back.
okay.
And most of this
Thank you.
related to the fleet operation.
Yes,
Yes.
okay. No, I get it
Yeah.
now. I just, when you say credit, I'm thinking debit. I'm not thinking.
It's revenue, it's not real. revenue.
Bank-
Yeah, I know. I know.
Because your debits and your credits are that.
Moving money around in different city pockets.
I think that was 2 comments and 4 questions. Do you have one more question?
No, that was fine.
All right.
I just didn't get there's 1, 2, 3. Oh, yes, that's one. What's a flail
Flail mower.
mower?
Oh, I had that question.
Mo.
Yeah, so our flail mower now, well, it's number one, it's a mower with things that fly around that cut things off. They're flails, because they're
So
not
it's more
fixed.
for,
It's for mowing, and right now we just have a narrower, we're looking to go a little wider to be more efficient. But it's nice to have, not a must have.
And this is a roadside, more of a
This is for
roadside and an
roadside work.
esplanade type
Roadside
thing, not where
fields.
it's mode.
Yeah, it just goes on the back of a tractor and you're driving around,
Yeah.
cutting down that tall grass. And we have a requirement, like on the landfill cap. We have to mow that once a year. It's a requirement, closing down the front of the site. So there's things like
we have
that.
a landfill.
At the end of
City
the
Forest.
Kittredge Road.
Oh, Kittredge. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So we
Okay.
have to mow that once a year as part of the agreement with DEP.
All right. That was the 5th question. Thank you.
I will say, just to answer your first question, we'll get back to you with a more comprehensive answer, but one of the reasons that could go down is staff turnover. Part of what's built into that is like retirement, which if we have an employee that's on the upper scale, the city or the retirement piece for them would be higher than someone that coming in at the lower part of the scale. So if there was staff turnover within those departments, that would mitigate that and be part of that change.
Mhm. Great.
Other questions and comments? Okay. Anything else for the good of the order?
No, this is.
Wow.
Well, we cut out a department thinking we might go a little long tonight, but, so next week's agenda is gonna look really long, but we hopefully will be able to zip through it.
Hoping we didn't.
Change your-
Thank you very much. We are adjourned.